This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm Patrick Lulo.
I'm Sam Merciers.
I'm Dave McDonald.
I'm Nate Blyton.
And hopefully we won't have so many technical problems in the future.
We're having bandwidth issues this morning, so if you have any cloud at Comcast, shake your fist in anger at them when you get a chance.
Go
on
to
our
bat
behalf.
for SoundNotion.tv.
That's right. We appreciate that. So what are we talking about this morning, Patrick?
Well, we'll be talking about the Sphinx Orchestra and some recordings that Justin Davidson might be open to listening to in the Grammy protests. But first, how low is low?
Really, really stinking low.
It is low. Nearly 3 octaves below middle C, actually. A low E.
So
E1?
Decca Records is currently on a hunt for somebody that can sing a stupid low E. This is E1, the lowest E on the piano, I believe, if I'm imagining the piano correctly. A Welsh composer, Paul Mealer, has written a piece called De Profundis that Decca Records is looking to record, and he has decided that I guess this is something that he really likes to do, is really stretch, especially the low range of vocalists in a chorus. And so he's trying to kind of break that barrier again with this really, really ridiculously low E. So here's you can see what that looks like if you're in the video. And they did a story about this on NPR. So do you have that audio?
Yeah, let me grab it. It's a pretty impressive note they do. I think they play a little synthesizer version of it.
We're singing the lowest note on record. It was in F sharp. He recorded it in southern Illinois. And the note we're talking about, it should be a breeze for you in that case. Here, I'm going to play you that note as we recorded it earlier. Can you give us your
So they want somebody to sing that note.
Illustrated in Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.
Sure.
Swing low, sweet chariot.
There it is, folks.
Right. There you have it. So that's actually lower than the E that we were just listening to.
Yeah. Crazy.
Which is kind of crazy. So that guy's the world record holder. I don't think he's actually going to be the one doing this. I think Decca is looking for a more classical singer that can do this. But, man, if you can do it or if you know somebody that can do it, send them over to Decca. Because I want to hear this piece when this gets recorded. When this piece gets recorded, it needs to be a pick of the week, so I can hear somebody sing that. So my question when I was first listening to this is, why don't they just fake it? Like, they could fake it pretty well, I think, right?
Like, can you really hear that E? Is that
no?
what
I mean,
you're
like, have
implying?
somebody sing a different note and then just with the computer move it.
Oh well, I imagine it'll be live though, right?
Well, this is a recording project.
Oh, okay.
This is Decca Records is the one looking for it. I mean, it would be different live for sure.
Yeah.
But like, are you gonna have this
better.
guy? Are you gonna like carry this one guy to every performance of this piece ever? That seems impractical.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you write music for something like that you knew going into it that only like literally 3 people in the world could even perform?
No.
No, I feel like a lot of people like could sing it. It just sounds bad on so many people. Like, you can make your voice do like very few clicks, but like that guy obviously has a full-bodied voice where it actually sounds like the note instead of just like that, you know?
Yeah. Right.
What I want to know is, why don't they put in a request for a male singing a super high note? Because then
That's
I think
old
I might
news,
be able-
though. I feel like
I might be able
men
to.
singing super high notes are like, I mean, those like countertenors are a dime a dozen, ish. I mean, I guess they're not really a dime a
No,
dozen, but like
it's
in
actually-
comparison to people that can sing E1, they're extremely plentiful.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like I've got recordings of men that can sing really high.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never heard anybody that can sing quite as low as this guy just did.
So is it a soloist that they want for this piece?
It's not clear based on this story. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
It seems
I
like
couldn't tell either.
I don't know. Excuse me. It seems like it would have to either be a soloist or a very lightly scored ensemble to hear that over anybody else.
Right.
Right. Because I'd like to hear, hearing him sing that note by himself is cool, but I'd like to hear 10 guys singing that note all at
Oh
the same
man,
that'd be
time.
incredible.
that would be sweet. I don't know
Like
if you
in
could
a
find
circle
10 guys
around
that
me.
could sing that note.
Yeah.
I wonder
Concert
how much
section.
control a person, even if they can sing that low, I wonder how much control they have.
Mm.
'Cause your chords would have to be pretty open and loose to sing that note.
You could have plenty of voices where you could write some, like, imagine a second inversion major chord where the E is the bass and he's singing that, and then just the intervals above that. That would sound cool too.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna put that one to bed, but we will definitely come back to check it out if
Yeah,
we can.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'll revisit that.
I want to hear it when it's done.
So the Sphinx the Sphinx Organization turns 15 this week, right?
Right.
Sphinx is a really cool group. If you're not familiar with Sphinx, are they based in Detroit? They're an
I believe so, yeah.
organization that was founded to increase the number of minority musicians in orchestras in the United States. It was founded by a African American violinist, I think, and
Aaron Dworkin.
Aaron Dworkin. Yes, thank you. And he observed that, everybody in the conservatory around him and everybody in the orchestra around him was white, and he thought this music was really great, but there was no diversity in it. And so the Sphinx Organization is dedicated to making classical music and orchestra in particular a more diverse place, which is a very cool goal. And their big thing each year is a competition that they have for minority musicians, and then the winners get to go play and solo with these orchestras all over the place. It's a really great opportunity for a lot of people. So, do you guys have anything you want to add?
Well, when I was watching the video and kind of just perusing the website for the organization, it made me think, they don't talk about new music anywhere in their message, and that's fine. But it made me think it would be nice to hear someone who has, an informed opinion about what sort of racial, as we move towards sort of more racial equilibrium in lots of different domains, what effects that does have on new music.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I've heard people in stories about Sphinx. I don't know if Sphinx makes a big deal of it themselves, but I know in stories that I've read about Sphinx in the past, that they talk about minority composers. I don't know if they have anything like their competition. That's what they should do. They should have a composition competition as well.
Yeah, because you know how much I
mean,
love
there
composition
are.
contests.
I know, but that's how you get attention. Like, how else do you
That's
get
true.
attention?
That's true.
And generally, more venues for you to put out more work, like more competitions for more people. That's always like, I'd be interested to see what would happen with that, and if there would be any other like distinct kind of voice coming from this group. It'd be interesting.
We apologize, by the way, for the quality of our stream. We've, over the last day or so in SoundNotion Studio, has been having some connection issues, so we're gonna, like we said, have to deal with some people at Comcast. Have some people taken care of.
Gloves are coming off.
Gloves are coming off, indeed. So, anyway, Sphinx Orchestra, check them out. Sphinx Organization, check them out.
Yeah, the video we
support them.
mentioned is on artservemichigan.org. You can check out a cool video presentation they did. About their
Yes.
15.
So, Justin Davidson is looking for some music to listen to, and he would like your help. Justin Davidson of New York Magazine.
It's interesting that we started doing the podcast. It seems like figuring out how to find new music and who's talking about new music, and that the kind of thing he's trying to accomplish by this project is kind of like what we had to go through when we started trying to figure out how to do this podcast. I I think that's pretty interesting that he's looking. I think it's a cool project, and I think
cool
it's
that he's just putting his email address out there and saying, "Send me this stuff."
Yeah, but the one issue I have, at least with the way it voices this, is he's talking about the new music scene is often too sprawling and uneven, or else too tiny and uneven for a clear picture to form. So that sort of operates on the assumption that what we want, or the natural order, or whatever, is a clear picture. And I think that as far as new music goes, we're kind of beyond a clear picture.
Right. I agree. And that's one of the criticisms that I think a lot of people have had about this particular article, is that he makes this assumption that we should have kind of a view of what's going on right now that is like the view that we have of what was going on in the classical period. We look back at the classical period and we say, oh yeah, there was Mozart and there was Haydn and there was Beethoven, and we don't have anything like that.
Yeah.
Even more recently, we have the first wave of minimalism. We have Terry Riley and Steve Reich and Philip Glass and and John Adams, and isn't that great? We don't have anything like that today.
Yeah,
but even if in those times there was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's just the ability for everybody to know about the stuff that is going on is increased on an order of magnitude.
Right.
To me, like, if you're wanting to find out what's going on, it would be more beneficial to concentrate that effort in, and here I go again, more locally. Like, how can you take an interest in cultivating and connecting with new music and new music artists in a way that helps form more of a community, either, physically around you or virtually, but hopefully in combination. Instead of trying to come up with a picture of, okay, this is what we're going to call what's going on in new music so that we can have something to talk about.
Right.
I don't think people should just, out of the blue, like, send what they think would be a piece that nobody would know, though. I mean, like, if you really like a popular piece of classical music that is new, you should still send that piece.
Well, sure.
I mean, like, just if you want to, tell people about this music that not a lot of people may know about, that's fine too. But I mean, like, I wouldn't send something that I know is less popular just because I know it's less popular. Like,
well, I'm not trying to make it into a, the T-shirt that says "I'm so cool, I like bands that don't even exist."
Yeah.
Right. I don't want it to be like that. Maybe we should reserve some judgment until after, because after he gets all this data, it would be interesting to see what he does with it.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to make a list of all the stuff, like the most popular pieces he received or whatever it may be.
Well, hopefully he'll make it into some sort of a platform that people who contributed and people who are, people whose music was contributed will hopefully find some sort of fruitful connection.
And another thing that I think would be valuable to collect was the means by which all these people found this music, and collecting that stuff, like a huge link list of different websites, or just like people to talk to, like, what's going on in Los Angeles, what's going on, or whatever.
Sam, you were saying that talking about being a platform, and I think that's really a key thing here, because we're talking about kind of a fragmentation of the culture at large, but in music in particular, that not everybody has to listen to everything, and we don't all regard the same people or hold the same composers in the same regard. And that's one thing platforms allow, is for people to coalesce around the things that they like, and more or less remain ignorant of the things that they don't like, and keep them in their musical blind spots, if you will.
Yeah,
see what I did there?
Yeah, but it gives you access to a bunch of sort of weak ties that you might investigate and find excuse me, people that you would like to meet or collaborate with, even if they're not quite in that niche that you normally consider yourself a part of.
Absolutely, and that's always an issue when we're talking about finding things on the web, is the filter bubble effect, that you only see the things that you and your friends kind of choose to see. Eli Pariser famously invented that term, as I was furiously Googling, because I knew it was somebody that I should be able to cite. but that's kind of the drawback of the platform system, and you have to find a way to, you know, coalesce with your community around, you know, your tribe of people that likes your thing, but still find ways to experience those things that are outside your tribe, and maybe expand beyond that.
Right.
I don't know. So if you have anything, you should send them to Justin Davidson, and he has thoughtfully published his email address in this article on Slate. Or this is not Slate. This is Atlantic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or no, this is not Atlantic. This is New York Magazine. Goodness. I knew it was one of those. You know, the New Yorker, New York Magazine, Slate, Atlantic.
Some New York.
One of those fancy pants, you know, hipster journals of record.
Yeah, some not Michigan thing. Whatever.
Did I just insult like everybody on the East Coast right there? Or at least everybody that writes for any of those 4 magazines.
We're just pretending.
Dissociate myself from this show for the betterment of my career.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I'll try not to let it happen again.
We're all just jealous.
Yeah, that's what it really is. So the Grammys are, you know, we talked about this when it was first announced that the Grammys were going to reduce the number of awards that they are going to offer, and the way that they're doing that is to take away from a number of smaller market genres. So there are many fewer classical music Grammys that will be awarded this year. American roots music is going away. A lot of smaller market genres aren't going to get Grammy awards, and this has caused a lot of consternation in the music industry, which I think is understandable, because one of the things that the Grammys did was it allowed these people to have some recognition that they wouldn't otherwise get. Right? We're still going to know who Kanye West is, regardless of whether he wins a Grammy, because he sells a lot of records and he's on the radio all the time.
Right.
And the Grammys allowed for people that we wouldn't have necessarily known so much about to get a little bit of recognition from popular press.
So before the consolidation happened, did you feel that there were not enough awards or too few, or do you think it was like a good amount of recognition all around?
I think having the Grammys at all means there's too many awards.
What do you mean?
It's a giant waste of time and energy.
Why do you say that, Sam?
He just doesn't have a Grammy. So.
Sam, yeah, that's what it is. Sam is jealous that he doesn't have his own Grammy.
That's it.
Keep it to yourself, Sam. Sour grapes, that's what this is. Sour grapes, Sam.
I don't have a Grammy yet.
That's true, yeah.
No. I mean, sure, it's cool and all, but it's like the Miss America pageant, you know? Haven't we grown out of this yet? To me, it's like a giant celebration that most of the emphasis and most of the awards go to people who are a part of the industry, and it's like industry awards, you know? It's not about the best artists necessarily. It's about, you know, a pop music beauty contest.
Well, and that's...
I think the Grammys could never, ever happen again, and it wouldn't do anything bad to the human race. It might actually do good things.
You could say that about a lot of things, that if they never happened again, they would not be bad for the human race. But I mean, so yes, of course, the Grammys are not they're a very first world problem,
right?
But
yes,
I think it's important to recognize the people that are the best in a particular field, and now the Grammys probably could do a much better job of that than they currently do, in by finding the people whose work merits artistic recognition, rather than seemingly focusing on the musicians whose work is the most commercially successful. But I don't think it's bad to have an award. Are you saying that it's bad to have awards?
I just think
Well, it was
I just don't
100
understand.
Why do you have to be such a contrarian all the time? Serious.
It says that at its peak, the Grammys had 110 awards, compared to just about 24 with the Academy Awards.
Well, there's a lot.
now,
You know,
110
that's not a fair
110 is
comparison because there's a lot more music that's made every year than there are movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a fair comparison. I reject that.
Here's what I think. Like, people talking about, you know, this category or that category has been cut, and I think we deserve, you know, recognition in this category. I think a healthier or more forward-looking and embracing the eventuality type of point of view would be, this is a symbol of the lack of importance of these awards. And because I understand now that they are so unimportant, I'm going to stop caring about them.
So do you think it could turn into a situation where there are, like, it's like, oh, well, this person has a Grammy Award. Who doesn't have a Grammy Award?
Yeah, I mean, this is like big media celebrating its bigness and its biggest artists, which is why categories that they try to you know, they try to pretend that they care about, but, you know, they're cutting those awards, like the American Roots and the Latin Jazz and all this stuff. They don't care about it because that's not where the money is. That's why they're being cut. That's why we should say, let's forget about the Grammys instead of we need the Grammys to go back to honoring all these people, because it's not an honor.
You know, this is actually kind of interesting because we were just talking about platforms, and I was kind of twisting your words, Sam, to say that platforms are a great way to coalesce around these niches. And the Grammys are kind of the opposite of that.
That's
They're
exactly
a way
right.
to pull us away from these niches. But what it does is it gives these niches attention from people that wouldn't necessarily hear about them. And I think in some ways it might be more meaningful for musicians to receive awards, if we're still going to have awards, if you'll permit me an award, from organizations that deal with smaller subsets of the world of music, right?
Right.
So like the Grammys, I can ostensibly are trying to address the entirety of the music industry.
Yeah.
Where or at least American music, and it might be more artistically meaningful to get an award from an organization that is focusing on, say, new classical music or American roots music or jazz, but it wouldn't have the same cachet to the wider culture as a Grammy Award, and I think that's valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's valuable.
It's
from a financial
valuable
point
for
of view,
me
absolutely.
to point to somebody that doesn't know anything about jazz and say, this guy won a Grammy. It doesn't mean anything for me to talk to somebody who doesn't know anything about jazz and say, this guy won a Downbeat Award.
Right.
So why do you feel that's going to give them more, you know, scope in the music industry if they win the Grammy Award, if they don't even know about them in the first place? Are they going to, because they won the Grammy Award, is somebody going to pick up the album?
I think so. Why not?
It's
I
just
mean,
a culturally accepted...
even if they don't pick up the album, if they ever have the opportunity to hear them, they'll take them more seriously. You don't think so?
I mean, I don't know who won the American Roots Music Grammy last year or the year before. I don't know any of these people. I've never heard of them.
Yeah, those are the
I mean,
awards
that's part
they
of the
don't
idea,
televise.
I think.
You know, and the people that care about the American Roots Grammy are the people that already listen to American Roots music.
It's got to be on the Grammy Awards ceremony, the televised part of the Grammy Awards ceremony for I think to make any difference, really.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I'm totally in the minority here.
For all my contrariness about the Grammys, however, I will say that they usually have some super awesome, bad to the bone live performances.
Bad to the bone live performances,
which are good to watch, fun to watch.
All right, we'll give them that. They do those things. Man, totally off track. I'm totally bummed about Whitney Houston. That's very sad.
Yeah.
As we record this, Whitney Houston died yesterday. So.
Yeah, she actually had sung at a local club with what's her name? Hold on, I got it.
I got it.
No, I don't got it.
So
Kelly Price and Friends Unplugged for the Love of R&B on Thursday night, just last Thursday. It was like basically an awareness gig about all the R&B categories that were cut, and Whitney Houston briefly duetted, as quote, duetted with Kelly Price.
Right.
And then, yeah, so died yesterday.
Well, so I think we actually may have passed over this, but the reason we were talking about the Grammy consolidation is that there's a group of musicians that's going to be actually protesting the Grammy Awards, which seems silly. I don't think those people are going to win any Grammys anytime soon.
Why does it seem silly to you, Dave?
Because it seems like you would want to be nice to the people that award the Grammys.
But
If
it
you
seems like they
ever
have a
have any
problem
hope
with
of
what
getting
they're
them.
doing.
Getting one? Yeah, I suppose. Anyway, they're protesting the Grammys for this very reason, to protest the category reductions and the lack of attention that it's given to these smaller market genres. So, if
what
you
they say might even be more artistically, I don't know, ephemeral.
Artistically ephemeral.
Well, like they encompass a more of a breadth of different disciplines.
Okay, I don't think ephemeral means what you think it means. You mean
Why do you
eclectic?
keep on saying that? I do not think it means what you think it means.
Nice.
Did you guys know that the Library of Congress has a performance space?
Yeah, the Library of Congress is not like your local public library.
Well,
Like,
I assume
the
that.
Library of
Hey, I've
Congress
seen
has
that-
about as much in common with your local public library as Maserati manufacturer has with a guy tinkering with his bicycle.
Dave, I know that. I've seen National Treasure 2 starring Nicolas Cage.
And if Nicolas Cage says it, it must be true.
That's right.
I learned all of
love
my
this
American
movie.
history actually from Nicolas Cage. And I think
So
you
it's-
should too.
The
What a
Library
horrible
of Congress. The Library of Congress. He's a slut too. He'll do anything.
God. Well, he's in debt, right?
The Library of Congress. You guys are hopeless.
Go,
I'm trying
no,
to
you
pursue
got
this
it.
hard
Take it,
news here.
Sam. Take it away.
The Library of Congress launches a new endowment to support contemporary music. The Dinah Costin and Roger Shapiro Fund for New Music, honoring the life and legacy of composer-pianist Dinah Costin. And it's going to support commissions of new works, and starting in where is it? John Adams is going to do, in the spring of 2013, he's going to do a week-long residency there, and they're kicking off the whole thing with a concert March 7th and 8th, which this is actually sounds really cool. They're going to do Samuel Beckett's rarely seen play Ohio Impromptu, paired with a work by Costin that was inspired by that play called Distant Intervals.
Cool.
And a whole list of musicians. It seems like it's going to be a great show. I wish I could get there and see it.
So they got a big new endowment, and it seems like they're going to use it to great effect. Very exciting.
So very cool, and kudos to them.
Right. So good work,
I didn't
Library
mean
of
ephemeral.
Congress. We approve. Sound.
Yes.
You should put that on your stuff. SoundNotion approved. We
Yeah.
should make a
Yeah.
stamp.
That's right.
The Library of Congress is in the process right now of installing a plaque out front that says "Approved by SoundNotion."
That's right. It's just being commissioned right now.
That's right.
It's actually a statue. Yeah.
So we actually have some instrument inventors here on the panel with us. A lot of people don't know this, but I think at least 3 members of the panel have homemade instruments in varying degrees of completeness, laying around their apartments and what have you.
That's true.
So why is it that it takes so long for new musical instruments to catch on?
Well, they're probably pretty hard. And they're new.
And they're expensive.
Well,
Yes.
not necessarily expensive, but it's the. Anyway, we're
all these instruments that they're talking about in this this Atlantic article. This is so this one is really the Atlantic. I promise this is the Atlantic. So there's this fantastic competition that I had known nothing about, called the Guthman Musical Instrument or the Guthman Guthman musical instrument competition at Georgia Tech for people creating new instruments. And there's an article kind of about the people that do these things over at the Atlantic right now. And I guess it's amazing that there are this many people that are into this as their primary focus. I had no idea that this was a thing. I knew some composers that have kind of made some things, and I know a little bit about the weird instruments that Björk uses, but that's about it. So this is like a whole world of things that I didn't know existed. And they're talking about, in the people interviewed in this article, how they spend all this time and money developing these instruments, and they just don't understand why they don't catch on.
Yeah.
Well, it could be that it's $1,500 to buy one, and there's nothing to play with it.
Yeah, and it's hard to learn, just like any other
Right.
instrument. But there's nobody to teach you, and that's part of the fundamental thing of using these new instruments. And it's a thing they talk about in the article is, just kind of the trials of, like, I mean, people might try to make a new music instrument, one that has a special interface that can do like crazy electronic sounds, but you can play it and really get that expressive quality in a way that you would with some other acoustic instrument, or make something that makes just like a sound that you've never heard before, but it takes like a special finagling of tubes and a series of buttons and everything, and so just like any other instrument, there's a learning curve, and you have to.
Are you saying that's made up of a series of tubes?
Some instruments.
So they
Well, you know
mentioned
what?
the last
Well,
instrument to really catch on is the turntable, and that
Yeah.
was first, used as an instrument. It says 36 years ago, and the turntable has had 36 years to catch on, and it was adopted very specifically by one or two specific genres.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if other instruments have had that. The last one before that might be the steel pan, which is late 19th, early 20th century.
Well, the synthesizer, drum machine.
Oh, it's just true.
And so
Electronic instruments for sure.
yeah,
Theremin, synthesizer,
and
things.
but yeah, and steel pan before that.
You know, it's
Saxophone.
I guess-
interesting.
Steel pan's the
first-
last acoustic one, though.
The perspective I have on new instruments is kind of
This
interesting
turntable's kind of
because
acoustic.
orchestral instruments, wind instruments, in my case, because I deal with them all the time at work, it's weird how, if they were to build a clarinet now from the ground up, they could make it better than clarinets are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But there's just a tradition of that's a clarinet and that's how a clarinet works.
Right.
you
Wait,
know?
wait. Well, how would you make the clarinet better if you were to make it from scratch now?
Well, you could make it so that it has an octave key instead of a register key, which would make intonation better across the board, and make so that one of the most technically challenging things that you have to do with the clarinet is getting across the break, and it has to do with your left hand, and clarinet players know what I'm talking about. If you had an octave key, you could be like a saxophone, and a saxophone is a perfect example of how it was invented later, so they did something smarter. The break is like open on a saxophone. You don't have a messed up thing you have to do to get across from this set of partials to this set of partials, and a clarinet does, and it suffers technically and intonationally because of that.
Well, you should make you should design the one, Sam.
Nobody
You should
would play
design
it.
the new instrument,
Yeah,
the clarinet
They
of the
talk
future.
about it would cost so much money to develop, and nobody would play it.
yeah. 'Cause it-
There's a cool. I played a cool handmade saxophone, which there's a guy I can't remember his name. I'll find it and I'll put it in the notes. But I went to the NAPBERT convention, the National Association of Professional Band Instrument Repair Technicians convention in Minneapolis,
A
and a guy has a chromatic saxophone, so you don't have all these side keys and everything. It's like basically your fingers go straight up and down, but this is all chromatic. And he preaches about it because it's better in a certain way. Like if you learn how to play it, you can be more facile technically on it, but nobody's going to learn how to play it. But if you did, you can do pretty amazing things on it.
And that seems to be the struggle with all these instruments that they talk about. Like,
Right.
Where, like, research might move in one direction, but there's all this layer of layers of tradition and layers of habit that you have to work around as well.
Right, and again, we get back to the problem of having to learn the instrument without having a teacher to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was developing the sample in, every time I would add something to make it a little bit more musical, so you could have a little more control, I had to balance that with like, man, now I'm gonna have to practice this thing even more.
Exactly, right.
And that's a part of it. Like the more like a musical instrument you make it, the more control you give to the player, the harder it is to play. And again, you get back to having to practice and having to learn this thing that there's no teacher for.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
Exactly. So who's teaching these instruments at schools?
well, Berkeley has a turntable program.
Which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't know about it. I mean, nobody's teaching any of these other instruments.
Right. There's no
that are listed in here.
Argenhart professor at MSU.
I feel like if it's not going into the orchestra, then it's just like, oh, that's an instrument.
Screw that. Orchestra, go get out of here with your orchestra crap.
I'm not,
Get
what?
out
I
of
mean,
here with your
I'm
orchestra
agreeing
crap.
with you.
Go
I'm
away.
agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. I wish it wasn't like that, but I mean, I think that's the way it
I
is.
mean, and that might be, like, getting into the orchestra is certainly a way to, like,
It's
if an
nothing- no,
orchestra's
no,
going to play the
nothing-
piece, then people are going to learn to play that
Right.
No,
instrument. Yeah,
I'm
for
sorry,
sure.
nothing will get into the orchestra again. It's done.
No, it's not.
It's all
They're-
done. No, it's done. I'm
no,
sorry.
you're totally
It's done.
wrong. You're totally wrong because there are a lot of
not.
new pieces that use synthesizer, and there are pieces that use tape and
Yeah, they're
video, and
yep.
saxophone is made.
Yeah, I
and
bet you they're putting
euphonium
those
in there.
players
I don't
on
want to hear
retainer,
it.
aren't
You're
they?
totally wrong. This is like sports shouting, right? Have
I'm
you seen-
sorry.
It's
You are wrong, man.
the 30 Rock where they make fun of my favorite ESPN show, Around the Horn, and it's just like 4 people in 4 boxes. Here, let's do that. All right.
Just intonation.
That's what she said.
Just intonation? Is that what do you got? What's your problem with just intonation?
I was just grumbling
you were-
and doing my
that was
fake
your-
arguing, and I needed something to punctuate the end of my sentence.
Well then, well put, Sam.
Thank you.
So moving on.
So moving on. Maybe we should save this next one for next week when we can
Yeah.
find somebody to talk about it.
And a longer
think we
discussion, I
should.
think, would be good. So,
Yeah.
So let's move to
Let's
our.
move on to the pick of the week.
I have a candidate, by the way.
You have a what? Okay, we'll get it next week.
Yes.
So our pick of the week this week is a recent recording by, I guess, are they Dutch? Slagwerk den Haag.
Sounds Dutch.
It sounds Dutch. We'll say they're Dutch. If they're not Dutch, sorry. A percussion ensemble of a newish work by Michael Gordon called Timber. And it was released on Nonesuch, I believe. And it's a really interesting production. I don't know if you guys have seen this thing. It's been reviewed in a lot of places, and everybody comments on the package that it comes in. So I'm going to switch to Nate's camera and then cover up his face. So this is the thing that it comes in. This is a wooden box. Right? It's a wooden box. It's laser etched with Michael Gordon timber and the artwork and Slagwerk, and then it's hinged. It actually is a wooden CD case, and inside, I don't know if you can hear me. I wasn't on mic there. And then inside, you can see there's, the CD, and it's very nicely carved, and there's a magnetic closure. So fancy pants thing, and I think it's really cool. I think this is the sort of thing that's gonna basically save physical media, is creating interesting packages that are unique, and that's the only reason I bought.
I thought you said that this wasn't gonna work.
What?
Like months and months and months ago, we were talking about this, and then it's like all dead.
No, I'm saying the only thing that can save physical media is making it interesting and
making awesome stuff.
the thing itself a worthwhile aesthetic object. That's what's gonna save physical books. It's what's gonna save physical CDs.
Merchandising.
Spaceballs the T-shirt. Spaceballs the lunchbox. Spaceballs the doll.
And now this is
Spaceballs the flamethrower.
Now this is Michael Gordon's Timber, the piece of wood.
Right. So I tried to play this thing, and it doesn't sound anything like. Here's what it sounds like. Doesn't sound. Yeah. Doesn't sound anything. Doesn't sound anything like.
Could use a little tuning, but.
So this piece is for. We actually played a video of this on the show a couple of weeks ago, being performed at a Lowe's. NPR started their field recordings series with this piece. You know, their series of putting performances out in real world unexpected places.
Like Lowe's.
Like Lowe's, for example.
Exactly.
And it's for, I think, 5 players, maybe 6, playing just 2x4s. Basically, they're dried 2x4s.
I think it's not really written for that, but the folks playing it in Lowe's found that you could play it using those 2x4s. And
I think that's how they're playing it here too.
Really?
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, in any case,
it's so the 2x4s are an approximation of what is this instrument called? There's this ancient Greek instrument that the 2x4s are an approximation of. There are 6 of them, and I don't remember what they're called. Simantras. So the 2x4s are kind of imitations of Simantras, and they each are tuned, cut to specific lengths. Anyway, there are just 6 of them, so it's very simple and very repetitive. But I think it changes enough that it doesn't lose my interest nearly as quickly as most music that's this repetitive does.
yeah. So let's hear a little bit.
Let's do
from part 1 of Michael. Was it of Timber?
Michael Gordon's Timber.
There we go.
All right, so that was Michael Gordon's Timber performed, an excerpt from the first movement of Michael Gordon's Timber, performed by, I'm going to get this wrong. I've been debating on how I should try to pronounce this all day, and I guess I'm always the one that gets stuck with how to try to do these, but I'm going to go with Slagverk den Haag. Could be Slagverk den Haag. Anyway.
Could be anything.
Well, sure. Could be peanuts.
Pronounced.
And if you wanted to know, the rest of the piece pretty much sounds just like that.
It goes through a bunch of different.
There are a lot of changes.
Yep.
You were very down on this piece, Patrick Gullo.
No, I know there are changes. There are changes, but I don't know. It's pretty static.
Man, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's some phasing stuff that happens later. Some really interesting rhythmic things that happen. Going between different textures, and like what you heard just there was this 5 or 6 people all playing completely in unison, shifting their dynamics and shifting their placement along the 2x4s in the video that we saw, and so getting different timbres out of it, and thus shaping harmony changes tied with the
when the instrument is that big, you can really play with the
harmonics
really easily. And so they do that. I think it's very cool. It's almost like they have this kind of acoustic filter.
Yeah. And so, I mean, our discussion of making new instruments is a particularly relevant one for percussionists, I think, because percussionists, like, when you go to school for percussion, you have to learn to play everything, kind of. Like, you end up playing, as a multi-percussionist, you learn to play like 60 or so instruments. And
Yeah, well, something I was thinking earlier when we were talking about a homemade instrument, or making an instrument, is that the inexpensive, easy to implement microphone is sort of like a tool with which a sort of an innumerable number of instruments could be made.
Right. The contact mic.
Yeah, you put it there and you hit something or blow something or shake something or whatever, and the fact that you can record it and control the proximity, and it's so cheap and easy to do that these days, kind of makes a lot of instruments available, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they take advantage of that in something like this. At least in the video that we watched at the Lowe's, they were using contact mics to record it. And I don't know if that's part of the piece or if that was just something that group was playing around with. But I agree, this kind of DIY thing is definitely an important part of pieces like this, and percussion music in general. All the time, a composer will just not be very specific about the instrument he or she wants to hear, and it's up to the percussionist to figure out how to make that sound.
Yeah, or even have really specific requests, but that are something you don't have lying around.
Right, right. I mean, I feel like most percussionists have, a set of mallets and sticks and a set of small instruments and then a toolbox.
Yeah, it's a project.
Right? It's always an event. Our friend Ty Forker, who was just on the show last week, had this great headshot that he used to use of himself wearing big old headphones with a handsaw in one hand and a flower pot in the other hand, as though that was gonna be how he was gonna play this piece. It's a piece for electronics and sawed flower pot.
I want to hear that.
I mean, it's not a serious piece, and I think that's a takeoff of a So Percussion photograph. But anyway, so that's the kind of thing that we almost expect of percussionists, is that they're creating their own instruments like this. So maybe that's the way to do it. If you're going to make a new instrument, don't try to make a piano. Try to make a percussion instrument. Mm-hmm. Revelation on Sunday morning for SoundNotion. Yep. Sam, do you have any thoughts on this piece?
If you're talking to me, I can't hear you.
Do you have any thoughts on this piece, Sam?
I like it. It's I think, I'm not the hugest minimalism fan, but I don't hate it across the board the way some people will profess to. I think it's very appealing to listen to and a good piece, Yeah. I don't know that I've heard it enough to have any kind of analysis of how it functions or anything, but it's enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, it's hard to sit down and listen. I mean, it's long. It's 50 some odd minutes.
Yeah.
Of just 6 people hitting 2x4s.
But you never really get
in a.
Which I know. I just sold 16 copies of this thing right there.
It seems like you should be in
16,000.
Like in an art exhibit, like the soundtrack to an art exhibit, because you're walking around some art space. I could see it in something like that.
So you don't think it could be the focal point of anything? I think it could easily be.
I mean, it could, but I like it more. I think I'd like it more as background music, or something to accompany something else.
This is way more. This is way more interesting than most of the Philip Glass music that I've heard in my life.
Yes. That's what I should have said.
This is way better than Koyaanisqatsi.
This is way better than Glass's Symphony No. 9.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, we'll go there. Happy birthday, Philip Glass.
But I think it's cool that, you can leave it running for the entire 50 minutes, and you can either choose to listen closely, and if you do, there is something to hear upon close listening, or you can just let it sort of, because it's pulse-driven minimalism, you can just let it slide into the carpet and, go about writing your emails or whatever while you're listening to it.
That's true.
And I don't think that I like concert music that demands close attention to get something out of it, but I don't have anything against music that's able to do it both ways like that either.
Right. I totally understand that. So I think we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this week's SoundNotion. Sam has a comment.
No, I was just...
Oh. Just
Rats.
All right. to read more about any of the topics that we've talked about this week, or to comment on the show, you can head over to our website, soundnotion.tv/SN, and leave us a note. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Twitter, where we're at SoundNotion. This show and all our shows are available in the iTunes store, so be sure to subscribe there for free and catch every episode. We also stream this show live most of the time at 11-ish a.m. Eastern Time at soundnotion.tv/live. We had a couple of people in the audience this week, and we apologize to those people because we had some serious technical issues that we have not had in a long time. So we're going to have to get those worked out for next week. But please join us and participate in the chat room. We'd love to kind of grow that part of the SoundNotion experience. And we'll hopefully see you all back there next week. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gullo and video by Tyler Lepp. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.